Most people think Social Security is simple. You work, you retire, you collect a check. And if you've talked to enough people, you've probably heard the same advice over and over again. Just take it at 62 and enjoy your money early. But when I sit down with people who are either about to retire or already in it, I can usually tell within a few minutes who followed that advice and who didn't. And the difference isn't small. It's not a few dollars here and there. It's the difference between someone who feels secure every single month and someone who's quietly hoping their money lasts. Because here's the part nobody tells you. There is a strategy behind Social Security, a very real one. And once you make the decision, you don't get to undo it. No reset button, no second try. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the most accurate Social Security strategy they never taught you, and why one simple decision could either cost you thousands or quietly make you thousands over time. Now, the first thing we have to address is probably the most common belief people carry into retirement, and that is this idea that you should just claim your Social Security as early as possible, usually at 62. I had a conversation with someone not too long ago who said, well, I'd rather take it early because what if I don't live that long? And that sounds reasonable on the surface. It feels practical. It feels cautious. But when you look a little deeper, you realize something important. That decision is not based on strategy. It's based on fear. Because what happens when you claim at 62 is not just that you start earlier. You're actually locking in a permanent reduction to your benefit. And we're not talking about a small difference. We're talking about up to a 30% reduction for the rest of your life. Every single check, every single month. And what's interesting is that most people don't feel that immediately, because at first, it just feels like income. But over time, especially later in life, that smaller check starts to matter more and more. Because Social Security isn't just income. It's one of the only sources of income you have that's designed to last as long as you do. And that changes how you should think about it. Because suddenly, it's not about getting money as fast as possible. It's about protecting yourself from the one risk people consistently underestimate, living longer than expected. And the truth is, the system doesn't reward speed. It rewards patience. Now, once you start to see that, the next piece becomes a lot more interesting, because most people think the decision is just early or late, but there's actually a very specific timing window that almost nobody explains clearly, and that window revolves around 3 key ages: 62, which is the earliest you can claim, your full retirement age, which is usually somewhere between 66 and 67, and then age 70, which is where your benefit reaches its maximum. Now here's where it gets really important. For every year that you delay taking your Social Security after your full retirement age, your benefit increases by roughly 8%. Not one time, every year. So if you compare someone who takes it at 62 versus someone who waits until 70, you're not looking at a small gap. You're looking at 2 completely different financial realities. Same person, same work history, same system. But one decision creates a much larger, more stable income stream for life, and the other locks in something smaller, permanently. Now, of course, there's always the question people ask at this point. Okay, but what if I don't live long enough to make up the difference? And that's where something called the break-even point comes in, which is usually in your late 70s or early 80s. And what's fascinating is that most people underestimate their own life expectancy. They plan as if they'll live shorter, when statistically, many of them won't. So the real question isn't just, when can I take it? It becomes, when is it actually smartest to take it, based on how long I might live and what kind of stability I want later. And once you start thinking that way, you realize this isn't a simple decision at all. It's a strategic one.
Now, this is where everything starts to come together. Because once you understand that claiming early comes with a permanent cost and delaying comes with a guaranteed increase, the natural question becomes, okay, so what's the actual strategy? And this is the part that almost nobody explains in a simple, practical way. Because the smartest Social Security strategy isn't just about choosing an age, it's about how you structure the years before you claim. I remember speaking with someone who had just retired at 63. He had done everything right. saved consistently, avoided wager debt, lived below his means, and yet, when we got to the Social Security conversation, he said something interesting. He said, "I feel like I should take it now because I don't have income coming in anymore." And that's the moment where most people make their decision, not based on what's optimal, but based on what feels necessary in the moment. And that's completely understandable, because when income stops, your brain immediately shifts into protection mode. It wants certainty. It wants cash flow. It wants something coming in. But here's the shift that changes everything. What if Social Security wasn't the first source of income you turn on, but the last? That idea alone completely flips the way most people approach this. Because instead of rushing to claim early, you start thinking in terms of building a bridge. And this is what I like to call the bridge strategy. The idea is simple. If you retire before 70, you use other resources to support yourself in those early years, so that your Social Security has time to grow. Now, those resources could be savings, they could be part-time income, they could be investments. But the goal is not just to get by. The goal is to delay your Social Security strategically so that when you do turn it on, it's as strong as possible. Because remember, every year you delay, that benefit increases. And once it increases, it's locked in for life. So what you're really doing with this strategy is trading a little bit of flexibility early on for a much stronger foundation later. And when you think about it that way, it starts to make more sense, because early retirement years are usually the most flexible. You still have options, you still have energy, you still have the ability to adjust. But later in life, that's when stability matters most. That's when you don't want to be worrying about whether your income is enough. That's when you don't want to be forced into decisions just to keep up. So instead of optimizing for the next few years, this strategy optimizes for the next few decades. Now, of course, this doesn't mean everyone should automatically wait until 70. There are situations where claiming earlier makes sense. Health concerns, lack of other income, specific personal circumstances. But what it does mean is that the default advice of just take it early is usually not the most accurate strategy. Because the real strategy is not about fear. It's about probability. It's about understanding that there's a very real chance you live longer than you expect, and positioning yourself in a way where that becomes a benefit, not a problem. And I've noticed something over time. The people who make the smartest Social Security decisions, they're not necessarily the ones with the most money. They're the ones who think differently about time. They don't just ask, how do I get money now? They ask, how do I make sure I'm okay later no matter what happens? And that one shift in thinking changes everything. Because suddenly, waiting is no longer seen as missing out. It's seen as strengthening your future. And that's really what this entire strategy comes down to. It's not complicated. It's not hidden in some complex formula. It's simply this. If you could afford to wait, even for a few extra years, that decision alone can dramatically increase the stability of your retirement. Not just in theory, but in real monthly income that you can rely on. So instead of rushing the decision, give it the weight it deserves. Because it's one of the few financial choices you'll make where patience is directly rewarded. So if you take one thing away from this, let it be this. Social Security is not a race. It's one of the few systems in life where waiting actually pays you more. And the people who understand that, they don't just retire. They retire with confidence.